Good morning and welcome to the Above Ground Leadership Podcast, episode 3. Thank you for tuning in. If this is your first time to the channel, please take the time to subscribe so that you don't miss any content. Today's episode, we'll have our first guest on the AGL podcast. Our guest today will be none other than a good friend of mine, my brother, Lieutenant Colonel Cory Cousins. Cory been in the Army 19 years. We served in Iraq together. He's a loyal and dedicated husband, father to his wife, Michelle, his daughter, Cameron, and his son, Marcus. And last but not least, he's a bona fide leader. Welcome to the show, bro.
Hey, thanks, Ray.
Today's topic, we're going to talk about successful leaders who build trust. And the kicker, the conversation kicker. As a leader, you earn trust the same way everyone else does, by making a conscious effort to make sure your audio matches your video, keeping your promises, aligning your own behavior with your expectations of others. When you keep that the core, you're constantly growing and enhancing your team's trust. The bottom line is this: nothing speaks louder about leadership than a leader's actions, and a direct reflection of those actions is their team's level of trust. All right, Cory, let's talk about leadership. Bro, so when we first decided to, to do this, I said, well, let's pick a topic. And man, right off the bat, leadership and trust. Let's talk about leadership and trust, and that's significant to me because, again, I know what type of leader you are, and I talk about, the podcast name, Above Ground Leadership. That's who you are. You're an above ground leader. Like, you're transparent, and that's what good leaders are. So to open that convo, so why was that like so big to you?
No, I really believe that trust is the cornerstone of all relationships, not just leadership, relationships. So as you're building out a relationship with a spouse, a relationship with a child, a relationship with a family member, without trust, there's no foundation. So, what I've learned over the last 19 plus years of trying to hone my leadership skills is like, if a person doesn't trust you, you can't get past step one, right? But trust is also it's easiest thing to build, the hardest thing to repair, right? So I've heard, multiple different, statements about trust, but one of the things that I've taken with me, or two of the things that I've taken with me a long time, is what you just opened up with, right? Is the audio has to match the visual. And that's really being authentic, being an authentic person, be you, right? And then the second thing is trust is lost in buckets, but gained in drips, right? So
that's good.
As I've gone over, my leadership philosophy over time, and as I've tried to be just a good person and mentor and leader to people, I always start with trust, because again, without that, you can't even have a relationship.
That's big, because, one of the things that you said is relationships, and that's part of leadership. And see, there's no divide in that. You can't have one without the other. You can't lead people without loving them. I mean, like, truly genuine loving them. And the trust is so important, because nobody cares until they know you care. You know what I'm saying? And so when you out here trying to get your team or your staff or your organization to the next level, they're not going to follow if they don't believe you care. If they feel they got to worry about themselves and worry about their personal, and that you won't put that in front of them, in front of your own, you're going to run into issues. One thing I remember this, and this is a conversation we had years ago. You say, Ray, man, one of the things that really sticks out about you is your ability to connect with people, right? So that's about being genuine, right? I believe there's not a group of men or women, whether it's, in a basketball, realm, in a business realm, in the Army, that I can't lead, because I know that I'm going to give them my genuine self. I proudly tell people that, if you see me out with my family, right, or you see me in the gym, or you see me in the mall, it's the same me. It's the same me. You're gonna get the same Ray, the same Coach B, you're gonna get the same Chief B, you're gonna get the same Sergeant B. Whatever, you're gonna get me, right? Because that's the easiest thing, because it's genuine. All right. And that's important. And I just think a lot of leaders, we kind of fall short of understanding that the respect and the trust is gained both ways. You know what I mean? See, a lot of shortfalls come because they believe the leadership, the position, it comes with the trust. You know what I mean? No, I don't come with the trust.
That's the fallacy.
Right.
I think that's the fallacy of the uniform, right? Especially from the Army perspective. I always call the little square now that we wear our chest, or back in the day, that we used to put in our epaulets, I called it the Superman cape, right? Like, everybody thought that once they put that on, they became the superhero, but that's not true, right? You still were who you are up under your top, right? When you are, I'm assuming, again, as I transition, when you go into business, it's the same thing, right? If you put on a shirt and tie, or if you put on the trash man's uniform, right, you're still who you are. So regardless, if you're not authentic in your care, it's going to show. If you put, like Ray, as you transition out of uniform into a suit and tie or into a sweatsuit onto the sideline, the reason why that transition was easy for you is because you are who you are. You're authentic. You care. And that's another tenet, I think, of trust, right? Like you led to. It's empathy, right? You have to care for the people that you are working with. Again, the reason why you connect is just because you are an empathetic person and you care, period. And you care about not only leading by example, but also giving of the lessons that you've learned. Because again, your life bared many lessons. As I met your mom and talked to you and your family, what you learned over a long period of time, you wanted to give. And it was a authentic wants to give, and you cared about giving that to all the soldiers, right? And again, it showed, it was clear, your audio matched your visual, and it connected. And not everybody has that, right? Because some people, I think, do it for themselves. Some people do it for the position. Some people have an ultimate goal of reaching their heights versus supporting other people to reach their heights. In your particular case, what stuck with me was that you didn't care about your progression, right? You always cared about others. For example, me, right? Like, again, I outranked you, was younger than you, but you cared about giving me what you thought I needed at the time. You were able to assess. You were authentic and wanting to put something in me because you saw something in me, and you did. You injected Ray into Cory, right? And it was something that I will always remember. I'll never forget. Which is again the cornerstone not only of our leadership relationship, but just of our friendship. So, again, it's the empathy that you brought at the time and that leaders should bring is the only way that you can connect. It does. So again, it's like this triad. I read this article a few weeks ago, like, authenticity is one, so be you, care is number two, right? The last thing is be competent, right? So you can do all those things, but if you ain't competent, like, nobody's going to follow you, right? If you don't know basketball, Ray, you ain't going to be a coach.
They ain't gonna listen. I don't care how far you can lead them.
They're not gonna listen, right?
They ain't gonna
and
listen.
so again, I think that as a leader, those three things are what build trust, right? What the article that stuck with me is those three things. And it's funny because you walk right into it, right? Because again, you're just an authentic, true leader, right? Mm-hmm. Authenticity, empathy, and incompetence are those three things that meld together to build trust. Again, it's just, if you don't have it, you don't. But there's ways you can work on it. You can work on all three, but again, it's easy to gain, hard to repair. I'll add one more thing. First impressions matter. Mm-hmm. So like, I think within the first 2 weeks of us working together, you decided that you were going to inject, right? Mm-hmm. Because again, you were authentic. It's not like, let me wait my 30 days to do my initial counseling to figure out who you are. It's just who you are, right? Oh. Like, let me get the platoon together. Let me assess, and then let me drive into this and go, right? It was who you are. So, and you were competent enough, in our particular case, that you understood, right? So for me as your leader, I trusted you. Mm-hmm. So you could tell me something, I could take that, apply it, and move forward, right? And I will tell you, again, as being as open as I can, because I am very transparent. Oh, no doubt. There were times that when me and you were together that I think on the competence side, I didn't have it all the time, right? And then you would steer me right back in. Hey, sir, right? Like, hey, this is what we're going to do. Right. And this is the reason why we're going to do it. And let me train you and teach you, right, and coach, teach, and mentor you in this way, and why we need to do it that way. Right. And it just becomes like this ebb and flow of, trying to figure it out. So again, me on the other side, trying to be the leader in our relationship, in essence, truthfully, again, it flopped because you were the stronger leader at the time. Mm-hmm. than I was. But again, I learned so much from our interactions. It's like, it doesn't matter if you're Private Ray Broughton and I'm Colonel Cory Cousins. If I'm able to build that trust with you, and trust in your competence, trust in your care, and trust that you're really being true and authentic, that just weighs more heavily than anything that square I have on my chest with any color in the middle. But
and that's man, that's powerful, because I'm a firm believer, and I tell a lot of leaders this all the time, especially like for warrant officers, and anyone that's not sitting in the seat, like assistant coach. Leadership doesn't need a title. Like, you're a leader, you're a leader. Like, you're private, you may be, on the staff, you may be a member of a team, and you may not have the title as the lead person, but everything rises and falls on leadership, right? So your leadership, be you. If it's you, people going to flock, people going to attract, right? I remember I was on another podcast, and one of the things we talked about was influence, right? And whoever has the influence basically has the locker room, or has the relationship. Like, whoever has, like, the best person or the best player or the best leader, not leader, but the best teammates, not always the leader. Whoever has the influence has your child's ear, has your team's ear, have your staff ear, whoever has the influence. So that's why it's really important, to know who has that influence. So you said you read something, you had a trio of things. Well, I kind of wrote down 10 of them, right? To drive this, that what good leaders in building trust have. And one of them that we'll talk about is being accessible, right? Because good leaders are accessible, because not only do your people, you need to know that you have that empathy and you show the empathy, but they got to know you're human, right? They got to know that you kind of go through the same things that they go through. I remember when I first met my JRTC class, right? The first thing I told him was, I said, what do y'all like to do? You know, they said, watch movies, play the game, play basketball, you know, do stuff, shop. I said, guess what? I do all those things, right? I got some rank on my collar, but I do all those things that you like to do, right? Because again, that's part of your team has to know that you're like them, that you're accessible. You bleed like them, you breathe like them, everything. And sometimes it's taken for granted because leaders feel, oh yeah, they know that, right? And while they do know it in general, but they don't feel it, right? And it's important for them to feel it because that's where their growth at. So, you know, again, you know, what you think about being accessible?
No, I mean, it's key, right? Because you don't want to come off as the king in the glass palace, right? Like, you know, where people can't touch you. You know, accessibility is so important because, like you said, it just shows, you know, another part of your empathy, that you care about building that relationship, and that you're not building barriers, right? And that you're not building, you know, a wall between you and the person that you're trying to lead or trying to build that relationship with. As somebody that that looks and watches and, you know, people interact on a daily basis, that's probably one of the things that breaks relationships a lot, when people separate themselves from the masses and then try to inject when it's time. It just doesn't work, right? I'll give you something. So when I was a brand new second lieutenant, they used to tell us all the time, like, you have to separate yourself because the soldiers are your peers in age, but you're not their peer in rank. And so I always found that hard to kind of manage, but because again, like, you want to be around the people that you interact with on a daily basis, but you also have to separate yourself when it's time to make hard decisions.
Right.
And what I tell these young guys now is that well, let me back up. What during the time when I was in it, I didn't think you could, you know, interact and then separate, because that's really the bond, or how that works, or the ebb and flow and how that works. At the time, I didn't think you could do that, but I watched over a period of time how people did it. They interacted and they separated, and because of the relationship and the trust that the soldiers had built with them through that interaction and that accessibility, and they built that trust, right? When it was time to separate, then they were still able to do their jobs. I didn't understand that as a lieutenant. So what I did was I interacted a little bit, separated, right? And I always felt like I had to maintain some space. So what I tell these young lieutenants now is, you got to get into the mud, right? With your soldiers, you got to get up under the trucks. You got to eat with them. You got to do PT with them. You know, and it's not just from the back of the platoon, right? Or, you know, you got to intermingle, because once you build that relationship, it doesn't matter. They're going to trust that you're making the right decision.
No question. So yeah, I definitely believe in that. So the next one was being confident, right? So no one wants to follow you when you shaky. Like, man, can you imagine? And you know, I talk to a lot of, you know, usually point guards, but I talk to a lot of players about, you know, in leadership. They say, man, you gotta be confident. Like, nobody, you can't be waffling back and forth when it's time to make a decision, right? And so for leaders, man, it's your confidence goes a long way. It's almost like if you're in a game and everything is going bad, and I can remember coaching at Prince George, and Brittany Fuller, one of our players, a JV game. Man, we would get our butt kicked, right? We were getting smacked. And she said, and I remember coming to the sideline and said, hey, we're going to come back and win this, right? We came back and won that game, right? But here's what's crazy. After the game, she said, Coach, I knew we was going to win because you said we was going to win. again, so your confidence as a leader bleeds and breeds in other people. And so it's very important to be confident. But what comes with that is that trust, right? They got to know that you're a man or a woman of your word, right? Because what you says matters, and what it matters not to them, but it matters to you. And I believe so. That's where that confidence comes from.
So I think confidence is also an outward expression of your competence, right? So if you study for a test, normally you feel confident you're going to pass, right? So in the example that you gave, the reason why you felt confidence in your team is because you knew you practiced, you knew the level of your players, and again, they built trust in you to believe, but it's really just, I think confidence is an exercise of your competence. Okay. As a leader, when you are trying to build trust, if you're not competent, you can't display it, or you're not being authentic. You see kind of how it all works together, right? You can go out there and you could, I call it the rah-rah guys, right? You can be a rah-rah guy with no substance, all right? I would take 20 non-rah-rah guys with substance over one rah-rah guy with no substance. Even though I would tell you in some teams you need a rah-rah guy, right? But I would take 20 people of substance versus one person of just non-substance on a team, because you can work with that. I can't work with people that aren't competent, right? And then you don't trust, right? I don't trust that you know how to do your job, that I can leave you alone, all of those particular things, right? So
that's Tariq. That's right on point.
Yeah, I mean, I think confidence breeds from competence.
Right.
So yeah.
So the next one is credible. Now you kind of talked about that in your trio, but being credible is important, because again, man, like you will make mistakes. Like being credible isn't knowing everything, right? But it's knowing when you're not right, right? Sometimes it's knowing when you're not right. But people believe and understand when you can give them a nugget. You know what I mean? You can give them a nugget and they can say, okay, I can learn from that. So being credible and having that competence is very important. I mean, and it's funny that we got to credibility and competence, and we done talked about it probably in the three that I mentioned before this. All right. So being credible.
Credibility. I think just if you let's just talk about it. It's another one of those tenets that requires time to build, right? So it's not one of those things you just walk in and you have, right. You're credible, right? It comes off credit, right? You build it over time, right? And again, it's a combination of just experiences with people and what you do over a period of time. And to your point, I laugh all the time. As I interact with people, my first thing is I always tell them, you're way smarter than I am, right? Again, I've learned over time is like, I'm not 9 times out of 10, I'm not the smartest person in the room. However, what I tell people is it's my job to meld this team together of all you smart people and move us in the right direction. There's no point of us being all on the same boat, and then you're rowing in this direction and you're rowing that, and then all the thing is the boat sits rowing in a circle, right? So I'm never going to be the smartest person in the room. Ray, you might not be the best point guard, but however, you can take that point guard, you can take that small forward, that shooting guard, the center, and meld those guys together to build a starting five, right? I mean, that's what it's really all about.
Hey, if you're if we always the smartest one in a room or the smartest one on the team, we got a bad team, right? If that's your,
we got a bad team,
right? Look, hey, but again, man, that's funny, but that's really like when it comes to team building, you got to put the right people around you, right? And you got to be able to, you got to put the right people around, and then you got to let them work. All right, the next one.
It's a puzzle.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Real quick, Ray. It's a puzzle, right? I mean, if you throw out 2 5-piece puzzle sets, none of them are the same. They're all cut different, right? And so your job as a leader is to take, and again, I use the 5-piece because of the starting 5 on the basketball team, right? But if you take that 5-piece puzzle and put them all together, you can't take a piece from this box and put it over there. You can't take a piece from another box. It's got to be from the same box in order for it to make the picture, right? Because they're all cut different. And so your job as a leader is to make that picture whole, right? And what's so funny is in the military, you don't get to choose your pieces, right? So you get to shave the edges. It's our job to shave the edges of the puzzle pieces in order to make, the square peg round hole work, right? But, in business and in picking teams, my assumption again is that sometimes you get to pick your pieces, right? So you have to evaluate, you have to be able to look at people and say, I know what that missing piece is. You are it. Let me put you in. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that's the analogy that I use.
That's funny because we got a running thing in our program. We talk about in kindergarten, we're taught circles go with circles, squares go with squares, triangles go with triangles. So you think about that little block, that little block, you pick up the circle and you're trying to put it into the triangle and it just won't go, right? Because they belong, they belong with their group. And that's kind of when building the team, you start talking about culture, right? Building a culture, the right culture, you got to have the right people, right? So that's significant that you said that. All right. The next one is being honest, right? This is easy. All right. This is easy.
It's non-negotiable.
Yeah, non-negotiable. Like when you talk about, people say, about being above ground leader, about being transparent. To me, that's the only way to be. That's the only way to lead. But the thing about it is, when you give someone the hard truth, sometimes it might not be what they want to hear, right? But that honesty goes a long way in strengthening a relationship, but you can't give that honest feedback, and you can't give that honest encouragement or whatever it is unless they know you care, right? You can't, nobody wants to hear that from you, right? Going back to you saying as a second lieutenant, being in and out, in and out, in and out. They don't really want you to come to them and tell them that they're not doing the right thing if they don't know you got their back. So that's really important, being honest.
So honesty, it's one of those non-negotiable deals. So honest about yourself, honest to people. Again, it's part of being authentic, right? Like you have to be able to assess yourself before you can assess somebody else.
No doubt.
I think that when you really look at just the interactions from a mentorship perspective, when you're trying to apply leadership, which is really, I think mentorship is trying to apply leadership and, doing those types of things. If they don't trust you because you're not honest with yourself, then they're not going to listen. The ears are closed. Right. There's so many examples of that, like a leader that doesn't pass a PT test can't talk to a soldier about passing a PT test, right? A leader that's overweight can't talk to, a leader that's, that doesn't look the part can't talk to a soldier ever, right? It just doesn't work unless you have overcome that through the other tenets. You overcompensated on competence, overcompensated. You might be able to
even
get
then, Cory, even then,
right?
They're like, yeah, dude, but man, look, right? And
right,
that's important.
Right.
That's important.
It is. No, so honesty is just one of those things, man, where even if you're not, how can I say this? Even if you're not right? And what I mean, even if you're doing wrong, being honest to yourself, like, I know I'm not always right, however come, right? But again, like, it's so important, man. Like,
no doubt.
And I always, take the approach of doing a self-assessment first, right? Like, what could I have done better in the situation, in order for this team to be better? So I always self-assess before I assess. Mm-hmm. Every time you point a finger, there's four back at you, and whatever. I always take that approach. But yeah, I mean, honesty, it's just, again, it's non-negotiable to yourself and the team.
Yeah, very, 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 very important. The next one is supportive, like leaders being supportive. And this really happens. I mean, you're supportive all the time, should be supportive all the time, but this really happens when there's something negative, right? Because it's easy to support and be there when a teammate or a subordinate does something well, right? But when the mistakes happen, right? And part of your rehabilitation of them, part of your teaching them and coaching them and leading them and mentoring them to the right way, they got to feel your support. They got to know that you have faith in them, that you believe in them. And that ain't coddling, all right? Because again, from our background, from military to, you have, I won't without names. Remember, we had someone that sent an email out. Doing a morning report when we were deployed, and and he went to say ma'am, but it autocorrected to mama. Remember that? I don't know if you remember that.
I don't know if I remember that, but
so it was an email full of mama listen or yes mama instead of yes ma'am. So I remember having to go in to see Hyatt, say, look, sir, listen, this is not the kind of, that's a mistake. Like, he did not, like, that's not disrespect. But again, it's that support. Like, people got to know that, man, if I make a mistake, chief coach has my back, and that's important. So being supportive.
I mean, again, we're talking tenets of leaders, right? Like that support the build of trust. Having that, like I had a leader, not throwing names out, and she was a civilian. Mm-hmm. She wasn't even still in uniform, right? And I used to tell her all the time, like, I knew no matter what happened, no matter who I talked to, no matter what I did, that you had my back. And then I also had another one that I didn't feel that way. So right. It affects what you do on a daily basis.
No question.
As you're typing an email or you're interacting with somebody face to face, or you're on the phone, or you're in a group setting. If you know that you got somebody behind you that is encouraging you and pushing you forward, and that even if you make a mistake, it's okay. I'll help you, cross, that hole that you might have fell in, or I'll pull you out of the hole. It creates a better atmosphere from a work perspective.
And it also, when they know that they can make a mistake, it also helps breed leaders. It help leaders not be afraid to get into their creative minds, because you don't need people on your staff or in your organization or on your team to feel they gotta think like you.
Right.
My boss now always says, man, if both of us doing the same job, one of us not needed. You know what I mean? that's perfect. So true. That's just so true.
It's so Ray. I mean, it's crazy because, like, the goal is that the people that are part of your team can be an extension of you when you're not there.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. Like, especially from the military, you always have this thing in your mind. It's like, what if I'm not there? Right. If something happens to me, can you continue to move on? Mm-hmm. And again, I was brought up as an artilleryman initially, mm-hmm. before I transitioned to logistics, before I transitioned to my current job as a force manager. And as a artilleryman, you always have to have it in your mind. As a combat armed soldier, you also have it in your mind. And again, you on the front lines as well. You were put in some really, janky situations. You always got to have it inside of your mind, like, can my soldiers do it if I'm not there in that moment of notice? And what breeds when the soldiers don't feel like you have their back is is hesitancy, right? Like,
Right.
and in our profession, hesitancy can get you killed. And on a basketball court, I mean, not to throw names, like Ben Simmons, hesitancy to shoot lost him a series,
Oh
right?
man.
And so, I mean, hesitancy could be the difference between success and failure. And
Right.
so, just knowing sometimes that you have the people that you have the confidence, or a person knowing that you have the confidence in them, so that if they make a mistake, you have their back, could easily, take away that hesitancy. To sometimes, like, hey, sir's not here, I'm making that decision. Hey, I'm on the court. I know the play we called is not drawn up proper, or if the play we called is not going to work in this certain situation, I'm going in this direction. And if I get 8, I get 8. If not, I'm just gonna go.
Right.
And I'll say one more thing, because I talk a lot. Like I talk to
my
son about that all the time. I talk to him about that all the time. Is as he plays football, I'm like, son, like, you got to get to a point where you're playing versus thinking, right? And a lot of that
reacting. You got to be
reacting, right? And some of that just comes again with that. Once you become competent in your position and you have confidence, then you can go. And then the leader behind you is supportive. Hey, if you made a mistake, hey, that's one play, move to the next, right? So yeah,
that's all in your preparation. So Marcus, that's all in your preparation, man. I get prepared. You prepare,
right?
Just react. All right. So the next one is dependable. Now, this is something that going back to your word and being honest, but people got to know they can count on you. Like at the end of the day, you can say all the right things, do all the right things, but it kind of goes to the audio video, concept. You say one thing, but do another. Like that's like probably one of my biggest pet peeves, when people say something, like I fall on that. Like I fall on it. You tell me, hey Ray, we're gonna do this at this time. I'm not planning anything around that time, because you told me that's what we're doing. So I will go like that. I'm like really big on that. I'm really big on, if I say I'm gonna do it, to the point where, my kids, if I don't tell them no, I might say, we'll see, right? Because they know if I say, yeah, we're doing it, right? But I'll say, we'll see. So they know he's probably still gonna do it, right? I just didn't put myself on the line with it, all right? So being dependable.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just one of those tenets that, again, supports trust. I mean, as you were talking, I was thinking through an interaction that me and you had that has stuck with me for 15 plus years, right? Like, in the dependability that you're describing is just, I think, again, drives the authenticity of like the person, right?
Right.
So I remember we were sitting, in Taji, and we were talking about colors on a slide. Red, yellow, green. Red, yellow, green, right? And you say, sir, are we chasing colors, or are we trying to make sure that people are great? Are covered? And I said, we're trying to make sure that people are covered. And he said, okay, moving in that direction. So you didn't care about red, yellow, green ever again? Right?
Hey, listen, I remember that conversation. I say, sir, look, man, like fuel moving every day. We ain't gonna be green all the time. Like, so let's get past. Right. I remember that conversation. I do.
So, but this is what I remember about that. And you probably remember the same thing, because I think it was integral in our relationship. So at some point, people started poking me for red, yellow, and green. And again, I was not strong enough at the time to be able to push back and exude that, hey, sir, we don't care about red, yellow, and green. I wasn't strong enough or in a position to do that. So I remember coming back to you and cowering a little bit and head down and saying, hey, Ray, we got to get these things green. And you're like, But yeah, I mean, it's I would say when you're in a leadership position, sometimes leadership positions come with certain amount of power. Mm-hmm. And when you don't have that power, sometimes you can and can't affect those things.
No doubt.
And in that particular case, I just think about the position that I was in, because I definitely understood your position, but I didn't have the power, right, to affect, what was going on.
And it's funny because, as a leader, I knew that, right? And at the end of the day, it wasn't important that you changed it, right? But it was one of those nuggets that it was important that you understood it, right? So when you did get the power, right, you didn't fall into the rat race or get into the rabbit hole of chasing colors. And I mean, that's just one example, but the big picture, right? The big picture.
But I would tell you, Ray, like for me, but ever since then, I kind of took the approach, like you said, you take with your kids. Like, I'm not going to say anything that I can't have ultimate control over.
Right.
Right. So I learned through that in many other instances that if I can't promise you that, I'm not going to say it. Right. So it might sound like I'm wavering, because I have this really bad thing of, if I don't believe it, it's hard for me to go 100%. And I even told that to one of my senior officers. I was like, sir, like, just part of me is, if I don't believe it, I don't breathe it.
Right. You can't commit.
I don't speak that out. He was like, well, he told me, he says, well, Cory, there's things that I don't believe every day, and then that I talk about, and I'm like, that's you.
Yeah, right. That's why we having this conversation.
Right. Right. Like, that's you, not me, Yeah. So again, it's really hard when I don't believe something to exude that, so yeah.
Okay. So being consistent, in leadership. And again, and that's, again, we've as a lot of these, I won't use redundant in a negative way, but a lot of them are redundant because they tie into each other, because your consistency matches along with your audio and your video, right? But the key to it is not being consistent some of the time, not following your word, or not doing the right thing some of the time, all of the time. Because when you achieve that, right, you have really reached a key pillar in building trust.
You talked about discipline in your last discussion, and you're one of the most self-disciplined people that I've ever met. Our other buddy is one of the most self-disciplined people that I've ever met. And most people that make it are self-disciplined, right? They have self-discipline.
Right.
So I think that plays a huge part in that, right? But again, it's self-discipline, right? Like,
right, no doubt.
So yeah.
It's easy to be disciplined when somebody's over you, right? And the self-discipline is tough, man. And to me, it starts with your will, right? Your will and your goal, whatever your goal is, and how strongly you want that, and you'll have fallbacks. But again, that self-discipline, man, it's I believe in. I just believe in in the consistency of it. But yeah, that's a whole nother show, right?
But not everybody has. That's not a normal thing. And so,
right.
What I talk to our other buddy all the time, and I have to explain to him that he's not normal. Ray, you're not normal.
Right.
Right. And I will never put myself in you guys' category, but you guys are not normal. And so and the reason why I say that is because I think that people tend to believe it's normal. Whatever I do is normal. And it's like, no, that's not true.
Right.
Right. And as a leader, once you realize that you're the exception in some cases, in certain things, you can't always expect that from others. Right.
Right.
Again, 100% being open and honest about myself. I lack self-discipline on many things.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm good at other things, right? I excel over here in many other things. And so, having self-discipline, I envy people that have self-discipline. I need structure. I call it my bumpers, right? The reason why the Army was really good for me is because in the beginning, it provided those left and right limits. It provided those bumpers. Like, I knew right place, right time, right uniform.
No doubt.
At this time of the day, that's what I needed to do. I needed that.
We all did. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I think one of the things that as you self-assess and as you learn about people and just people in general is that some of the traits that like you have, I have, our friends have, and the people that we surround ourselves, it's not normal. It's not a normal thing.
Right. Right.
And so then therefore we can't always expect it from others. And how you have, that's why leaders, I believe leaders are born. Can you teach leadership? Yes. But the tenets of that is inside. It's right. DNA. You can pull strings to pull it out of people, mm-hmm. but mostly it's there. Just take that into account. Like you're extra.
Hey,
you're not normal, bro.
But that is like really the basis and the fundamental of this podcast. That's like what you just said. And again, we didn't discuss some good information and we're almost done, but that's what this is about. All right. But the next one is being open. Right. And I think I kind of briefly touched on this earlier. People got to really kind of know that you're human, that you're like them. You're not them, but you're like them. And they also got to know that they can talk to you, that you'll listen. You'll ask questions, you'll encourage them, you'll listen to their concerns, and that they matter, and that their voice is heard. Right. So being open as a leader, again, goes a long way in building that trust.
Yeah, I had somebody just recently tell me the reason why they like, I guess, following me or why they appreciate me is because I ask questions. And again, I think I've said it probably more than once on the podcast. I'm just open and honest about me. Like if I don't know it, I'm gonna ask. I don't care the setting.
No question.
I don't care who's in front of me. Because I think that it's silly for me to act as if I know when I don't know. And even if, it might not be the time or place, I find a time and place to ask, right? Because again, I don't care like if it's Private Joe Snuffy that knows everything about the M978 HEMTT fuel tanker, right? Because trust me, Lieutenant Colonel Cousins doesn't, right? You don't know, you know what I mean? Like I can't tell you about the pump, the inner workings of the pump. And, that's why we have a Private Joe Snuffy. That's why we have a Chief Warrant Officer, Raymond Broughton, right? Like you just got to be able to be open and honest about where you are in that space and time. The other thing is, again, you have to understand, again, it's about self-assessment. You have to understand who you are. Like, again, it's as I go back to these tenets of trust, that's why it kind of stuck with me. Be you. Like you got to know who you are. If you're not, a stud at PT, right? Like then go find somebody to help you
get
stronger.
No doubt.
Right. If you're not a stud in the books, it's not always about that either. Because again, like I just kind of described in the other scenario, like I might not be the most self-disciplined person, but trust me, you're not going to outwork me. Right. Like, I'm really good at networking. I maintain relationships because I'm authentic and I care. There's things that I know about myself that work well in certain scenarios, right? And so, just being open and honest is one of those things. Again, I probably are overly open and honest, but I'm fine with that because I don't ever want you to not know where I stand. I don't play games in that way. To me, that's gamesmanship. Right. I don't have a poker face. Right. Like,
and it's funny you say that because I say this all the time. People that work with me, work for me, or however you put it, when you come in, you ain't got to figure out where you stand with me. Like, like there's no, we ain't gonna go back and forth with that. I ain't I'm not a moody person. So you ain't gonna come in, I'm down, I'm up, I'm down. You know where you stand, and I believe that's important. I really believe that's important because the more comfortable people are around you, with you, the better they're going to produce. All right, better your team's going to produce.
Absolutely.
The next one is, and we talked about this one. This is about being empathetic, right? talked about empathy, and sometimes I know, this may be one of my weaknesses because I almost with too much empathy. Because sometimes I believe, and anytime I'm asked in an interview, what's your weakness, is almost having too much empathy because you believe you can help everybody. You believe you can save everybody, and sometimes that's just not the case. But good leaders in building trust is having that balance, right? That balance of the results versus your team's feelings and their needs, right? It's you got to find that balance, right? And good leaders, they find a good perspective and understanding of how to balance those two things, right? And when they balance those two things, you just breed trust in your group, being empathetic.
Yeah. Again, what happened, at least in my experience, what tends to happen for people that are empaths, I'm an empath, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that you can either go one or two ways. It's far left or far right. Most things I think in life are on spectrums. Most people don't live in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Either you're over empathetic or you're not empathetic.
Right.
The people that find that sweet spot somewhere in the middle or somewhere in the spectrum are better served. I can remember, again, vividly, I think one of the best leadership times I ever had was when we were together in Iraq. I remember a soldier that couldn't wake up on time, and he was, when he got to work, he was fine. But I'm like, we're deployed. How are you not waking up on time? Right. But it was a thing. Like, he just could not get to work on time. He couldn't make it to formation on time. And initially, I was like, just keep giving the guy a chance, right? Because he's a good soldier. But over a period of time, I started to feel like he was taking advantage of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there will be times where you will give breaks and people will take advantage. But then there's also times where you give a break and then people will tell you thank you because I needed that and I learned my lesson. I can remember vividly a time where I had a soldier, she got in trouble. I'll give you an even better one. A chief warrant officer that got in trouble, right? Mm-hmm. And at the time, I got the call and I looked at him and I said, listen, between me and you, bro, because I understand where you are.
Yep.
Let me help you. And I remember talking to him afterwards and he was like, sir, I really appreciate that because I needed that assistance to get out of that.
Right.
And he's never gotten in trouble ever again.
Right.
Never, ever. Cory has gotten in trouble.
Right.
Right. And it was an empathetic leader that said, Cory, I know who you are. I know that's not you. And I'm willing, again, we talked about somebody having your back. I'm willing to go all the way up. Right. And they did. And without that individual and other individuals, I would have never gotten promoted. Right. It was, so empathy matters, right? But in just caring, you can't be a non-caring individual and be a leader. It's just, you can't worry about the bottom line and expect people to follow you. They'll do what they tell you to do, but nobody's going to take that. And I won't say nobody, because there are people that follow those type of people, but nobody's going to be able to take those words and then move without you. So
no doubt. All right. Okay. So the last one is being appreciative, right? So this is something that I would really believe leaders take for granted. Like, it's when you get, especially when you get a good team or you get a hard worker, like you gotta let them know, man, thank you, man. Like, you don't understand when people are pouring all, or giving it all to you, right? And when they know that you give them credit, when they know that you'll give them credit, when they know that, man, chief or coach, that he really sees this, or that's important. Like that's to give thanks to them and to be appreciative to them, that's really important. And I believe it goes it goes without saying that is vital. It's vital into building that trust, because someone could do this work and they'll know, man, well, I do this if I can do it 10% or I can do it 110%, I'm gonna get the same response either way. When people know, when they give that extra effort, that somebody is there to give them a little credit, right? It goes a long ways.
Yeah, I think that it's when people know you care, they'll run through a brick wall for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and showing that is what you're talking about. I think, like you said, just simple words. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate what you do. Right. I think the Army tries to do it, by giving awards or giving people time off and things of that nature. Some of it comes off genuine, some of it doesn't, right? Like,
Cory, let me say something. Let me interrupt you and say something to that, right? Because and I believe this as a team, this is something that we were good at. This is something that you were good at in command. So with awards and everything, that's almost, that's doctrine. That's what's supposed to happen, right? But the day-to-day conversations, the genuine good mornings, the genuine how you doing, the genuine let me stop by the office and see, those are all thank yous without saying thank you. Those are the things that people could walk by and say, I don't know if you remember, I used to say the commander, man, when the soldiers see the commander, they just need to see somebody smiling and they need to see happy time. The only time that they need to be worried about the commander is when they in that behind that door with the door closed in front of the desk. But it's important that walk around, that battlefield circulation, that meeting the janitor, talking to the janitor every day, that's all appreciation. And so while it is thank you, right? And the awards, again, that's like a pay raise. I can't, you can't give an award every day. I can't give you a pay raise every day, but I can show you that I'm appreciative and I appreciate you and the work that you do. And I notice that the work that you do, and I understand how important you are to the team. Sorry to cut you off, but I want to say that.
No, I think
as you said that.
No, I think that's perfect. I mean, I can remember walking around and I remember a soldier telling me, "Sir, this is the first time the commander came to see us." Right. And to this day, these soldiers still contact. Right. I remember just knowing what people did mattered. Right. So if you were a Humvee mechanic, or if you worked in the support operations shop as the S&S officer, or if you worked in the battalion S4 as a driver, just knowing what they did mattered, right? Yeah. What people did mattered. And again, it just comes to, you can easily look at a roster, right, and figure those things out, but it's much more authentic when you're walking around, shaking hands or playing football in 200-degree heat.
Oh my God!
In the middle of the day, right? I mean, it's just much more authentic, right? When you're being truthful to who you are and truthful to them, because again, especially in the military, these soldiers know. We knew when we had leaders that were faking it, And then I also give you one more thing: is sometimes, again, in that self-assessment, right? It's okay if you're not that leader, but don't fake it.
Right, because that's worse.
That's worse, right? Don't come off and be like, "Let me come shake your hand and give you, coffee for Christmas."
Like,
right,
man,
right,
like that, right. That's right.
That's just being authentic, you care.
Yep, and that's just what we have, man. And Cory, man, I tell you, that's the 10, and we had great discussion. I really, really appreciate it. So when I envisioned it, this was better than what I envisioned, right? But you were like hands down the right person to be the first guest on the podcast, like no question. And I appreciate you coming on, man. And I'll, successful leaders, man, they just understand the importance of trust and they take it seriously. They really understand that. they take it seriously, and they make it a habit to do it daily, to build on it and enhance it. I just believe that's what leaders are. You know, leaders lead. That's what we do, right? Regardless of the position or wherever we at, that's what we do. So again, thank you, man. Thank you for coming on. I'll leave that if you have any comments.
Hey, Ray, no, I always do. You can't give me, no, I was playing. No, I just really appreciate you offering for me to come on, man. It's really an honor that you even, think of me in that way. But again, as much impact as you might have feel like I've had on you, you've had double the impact on me. So I really appreciate it, brother. And just you giving it to the world. I think it's something that's honorable. And they hopefully, people can hear the genuine authenticity, the competence, and the empathy that you have, so that they can trust that this is something that's real, and it is real, and because this is who you are. And I hope the world can meet you. So congratulations.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. All right, folks, that's we're going to end this episode 3, leadership and building trust. Y'all have a great day. Y'all be great today.